I'm excited tonight to bring you our Live at the Library virtual watch party. Before we begin, I'd like to thank the Glendale Public Library's Performing Arts Partnership Program for providing the grant funding for this series, as well as Dr. Rose French, who is the administrator of this grant. She's the one that was speaking to us just a minute ago. Tonight we will watch a pre-recorded concert featuring the AESOP'S Fables by the Mill Avenue Chamber Players. This quintet will perform music composed by Thomas Braden, who is also a member of the Mill Avenue Chamber Players. And this music will complement the familiar tales of AESOP'S. We will view interviews with the composer, as well as artist Tiffany Holman, who created the artwork for these pieces. Thomas, Tiffany, and Rose French are on hand to discuss their pieces as well as answer your questions. You'll be able to use the chat features of Zoom to ask questions or make comments. Now I'll turn it back over to the Mill Avenue Chamber Players. I hope you enjoy tonight's concert.
Thanks so much, Ivy, for that introduction. So just some background first. We've been playing at the Glendale Public Library, I think now for 8 years. I believe it's been that long. So we've had a partnership with the library, and before COVID hit last year, we've been able to bring a lot of diverse programming to the library from the Live at the Library series. So our group, the Mill Avenue Chamber Players, is a professional woodwind quintet. So woodwind quintet includes flute, oboe, clarinet, bassoon, and most importantly, the French horn. And so this group has been here. I started the group in 2008, and we've been around since 2008. And before COVID, we held 5 different concert series throughout the Valley and did about 50 concerts a year. And so we've been really happy to be a part of the Glendale Public Library because educational outreach and bringing access to music, live music, to communities that usually don't have access to it is one of our missions as a group. One of our last recording projects was the AESOP'S Fables, and as Ivy mentioned, Tom, our bassoon player, is also a composer, which is a really handy thing to have when you play in an ensemble together. And we've taken advantage of it mightily. So our last album, which came after these pieces, Tom composed a piece for us as well. But tonight we're here to talk about the AESOP'S Fables, which ties in really great to have a literary connection to our Live at the Library series. And so Tom composed these 5 pieces mainly because we do a lot of educational outreach, as I just mentioned. We perform a lot for our partnerships with some elementary schools and schools that are part of the Great Hearts Academies. And so we're always looking for new material that can kind of tie in different educational aspects to what we do. So Tom, I just was wondering if you could give us, I remember when you were trying to figure out what fables to do, you literally read books and books and books of fables to figure out which ones you wanted to pick. So if you just wanted to kind of give us an idea of how you selected the 7 that you got to.
Yeah, I went through, I bought one book. The rest were kind of ebooks that I found online that had a lot of different versions of the same stories. But the first book that I got had something, it was the largest compiling of Aesop's fables, which come from ancient Greece, but also from a lot of different authors throughout the years. There were something like 770 some fables in there. So it took me a long time to read through those and mark all the pages and find the ones that I really wanted to do. And I think after reading through it, I had maybe 40, and then I had to narrow it down to that. Most of the stories, though, are copies of the story, just using different characters. Many were disqualified because they were very inappropriate for a school. And then there were a lot of other things that came about when doing that. But I wanted to make sure that we hit a lot of the really popular ones that everyone already knows. We all know Tortoise and the Hare, The Boy Who Cried Wolf. There were a lot of stories like that that everybody already knows, whether they know it's an Aesop's fable or not. But there were tons of other stories that no one's ever heard before. And so I wanted to make sure that we had a good balance of new material versus recognizable material when I was going through all of that.
So do you want to start with the most common one that people probably know is an Aesop's fable?
Yes, we're actually going to, that's the first video we're going to show tonight is the Tortoise and the Hare, which is probably the most popular and has been done over and over again. I do have one more quick thing. Most Aesop's fables are 2 or 3 lines long. They're really short. And so I did have to, once I found fables I liked, either find a more storybook version of it that's been expanded upon, or expand upon it myself and turn it into something that's makes a little bit more sense to modern audiences. But at the same time, I wanted to make sure I still kept it to the short, very quick, pointed ideas in which fables represent it. So I think I did enough of got rid of all the crazy flowery language, but still told a nice, full, well-rounded story. That was the point of that. So
Great. All right.
yeah, do we want to start with our first video?
Yeah. So these pieces have the artwork by Tiffany, who we're going to talk to after the first video, and then they're narrated by Kenny Miller, who's worked with our ensemble a number of times. So these pieces are for woodwind quintet, narrator, and art.
The Tortoise and the Hare. The hare was making fun of the tortoise for moving so slowly. "Do you ever reach your destination?" the hare asked with a mocking laugh. "Yes," replied the tortoise, "and I get there quicker than you would." The hare, amused at his brazen claim, jeered back at the tortoise. "Prove it! Race me now for all the forest to see." The tortoise accepted the hare's challenge, and with this, the forest animals marked the distance of the race and anxiously waited the signal. Ready, set, go! The hare quickly jumped far out of sight, while the tortoise forged ahead at a lumbering pace. Seeing the great distance he had pulled ahead, and wanting to humiliate the tortoise, the hare lay down beside a tree to nap until the tortoise should catch up. Meanwhile, the tortoise steadily maneuvered the course at a sluggish pace. After quite some time, the tortoise passed the place where the hare was sleeping, but the hare did not wake up. When the hare finally arose, he found that the tortoise was nearing the finish line. The hare, now fearful of losing the race, ran his swiftest to catch up to the tortoise. But in his slumber, he had fallen too far behind, and the tortoise crossed the finish line first. Patience and determination win over arrogance and idleness.
I always think those one-liners at the end are just so poignant. And you get the cool picture of the art. So I want to introduce Tiffany Holman. She's the artist that created these works, and I was just wondering with the one that we just listened to, how did you? This might be a really naive question because I'm actually taking art history this semester. So, but how did you decide on what colors you wanted to use for the different pieces? Because I noticed in each one the color scheme is completely different.
Yeah, so it kind of just like showed up in my mind's eye, to be honest. That one uses a lot of complementary colors, so the cool and warm tones. It's been almost 2 years since I painted it, and I know that it was just like a visual image that popped in my head. I do use a lot of symbolism, and luckily all of Tom's pieces already included tons of that in it, and so it was really easy for me to pick out the little parts of the tree and everything. But one piece of symbolism that you're going to see throughout all of the pieces together is they all have a circular kind of effect, and that kind of tied all the images together, but also showed kind of the circular kind of storytelling that is in all the Aesop fables. They all start somewhere and then kind of come around. So you'll notice that throughout all of them.
That's great. And so anything that we should look for in the next one, in the Stag and its reflection, or his reflection?
You'll see another circle in there too. Yeah, this one, yeah, just a lot of bright, vivid colors. Again, it was just kind of, as I started my process by sitting and just listening to the music and then studying the animals. Tom had mentioned that to me in his writing, that he actually watched videos of like hares and foxes and stags. And so I kind of did the same thing and then drew my inspiration from that color and movement and all of that. So yeah, so you'll see that.
See, I'm gonna learn that too. Tom, what did you want to tell us about the Stag and his reflection?
Well, I guess actually I kind of want to mention really quickly one of the things that goes into a lot of all of the compositions that we do is a compositional kind of tool that I like to use quite frequently in compositions, and that is a musical cryptogram. It's a way to turn literal words into notes that can then be used as just any kind of pitch material that you'd like in a composition. So I could say things quite literally in the music. You wouldn't be able to hear it necessarily, but it was really, really obvious in the last one with the tortoise. I can turn the line of the bassoon was playing that was representing the tortoise, literally said tortoise, using this cryptogram, and I can kind of show you with the cryptogram how that works. So we have all of our musical notes at the top, A through G. Everything underneath this, H through N, would be A sharp and B sharp and C sharp, right? O through U would be A flat, B flat, C flat. V through Z would be double flats. So if you take the word tortoise, it ends up looking like this in pitches. And that's literally the line that I used to write the line for tortoise. And I can use that either as literal pitches, or you can use it as a kind of a pitched center. So I can take a scale and use a letter, and that scale starts on that letter. And then when we get to the next letter, that scale starts on a different letter. So I did a little bit of both of those in Tortoise and the Hare. The tortoise was just very easily made into that, and then made awkward by all the leaps and jumps and weird things like that. So yeah, you're going to hear that in every composition that in Aesop's Fables. In some way or another, there are words literally written into the music that are either describing the character or any of the character's flaws or anything like that. So
what is the character's flaw in Stag and its reflection?
It's vanity. Yeah, vanity. Yeah, which is why I had the French horn play. You know.
Oh, right. Oh.
Yeah.
Back for all the years of saying French horn's the most important instrument in the woodwind quintet. All right, let's take a listen.
Okay.
The Stag and His Reflection. A stag, drinking from a crystal spring, saw himself mirrored in the clear water. He greatly admired the graceful arch of his antlers, but he was very much ashamed of his spindling legs. How can it be, he sighed, that I should be cursed with such legs when I have so magnificent a crown? At that moment he scented a panther, and in an instant was bounding away through the forest. But as he ran, his wide-spreading antlers caught in the branches of the trees, and soon the panther overtook him. The stag now saw that his legs would have saved him had it not been for the ornament on his head. We often make much of the ornamental and despise the useful.
Oh, that's great. Oh, I miss playing these.
Yeah.
Let's see, the next one we have is the oak and the reeds, and that's one that's a little bit not as familiar. Do you remember just the premise behind the fable itself?
Yeah, the oak and the reeds is those are literally characters. Just like every one of them, some animal or object or something is being anthropomorphized or given human qualities. And in this one, the oak is very proud of being big and mighty and strong, whereas the reeds kind of bend to the wind over and over again. And when really, really strong winds come, the oak fights against it, but eventually will break because it doesn't bend or give in any way, where the reeds just blow around and then they're fine. That's the idea. So yeah, it's a really interesting story.
That's great. And Tiffany, anything you want to share about this one for everybody?
Um, this one in particular was probably the hardest for me to illustrate. I love painting animals, love painting people, uh, but I do remember just painting it in Ohio. And I'd worked on a couple different concepts for it, but I wanted to do something abstract, which is not usually my background. Like I don't usually do any abstract. It's usually surrealism or realism. And so this was my best attempt at abstract art. But yeah, again, with the circular thing, you'll notice that as well. But yeah, so that's what the intent was, to kind of be abstract.
Very cool. Let's take a watch.
The Oak and the Reeds. A giant oak stood near a brook in which grew some slender reeds. When the wind blew, the great oak stood proudly upright with its 100 arms uplifted to the sky. But the reeds bowed low in the wind and sang a sad and mournful song. You have reason to complain, said the oak. The slightest breeze that ruffles the surface of the water makes you bow your head, while I, the mighty oak, stand upright and firm before the howling tempest. Do not worry about us, replied the reeds. The winds do not harm us. We bow before them, and so we do not break. You, in all your pride and strength, have so far resisted their blows. But the end is coming. As the reeds spoke, a great hurricane rushed out of the north. The oak stood proudly and fought against the storm, while the reeds bowed low. The wind redoubled in fury, and all at once the great tree fell, torn up by the roots, and lay among the pitying reeds. Better to yield when it is folly to resist, than to resist stubbornly and be destroyed.
All right. I
After a
forgot
while,
how.
you just have to go back and do everything right? Like listening. All
Yeah.
so
I forgot how dark that one got at the end.
that's not the only one.
Yeah, it's not the.
So I just wanted to jump into the next one, to the Fox and the Crow, because we so these are all up on our YouTube channel, but the Fox and the Crow in particular, all of them have about the same number of views. Fox and the Crow has, like, I don't know, 10 times the amount of views. And so with the metrics that you get from YouTube, this is really crazy. I was able to track down that there is a school in the United Kingdom, a primary school, that must be using this as some type of part of their music education classes or something, because it just has it has a lot of views, and through the power of YouTube, I was able to track it to a specific school in Great Britain, which I thought was insane. So
Yeah.
let's take a look at that, and maybe we can ponder on why in the world they chose this one.
Yeah. I do. Before we play really quick, I want to say the oak and the reeds was the easiest ones to pick instruments for. Like the oak, the bassoon, it's like looks like a tree. The reeds, clarinet and oboe, easy, done, like taken care of. That was really nice. And in the wind, the flute, it was so easy just to like pick those and let the instruments do their thing. And yeah, it was a fun one to do.
That's great.
Okay. The Fox and the Crow.
Yep.
Nope.
The Fox and the Crow. One bright morning, the fox was following his sharp nose through the wood in search of a bite to eat. Suddenly, he saw a crow on the limb of a tree overhead. This was by no means the first crow the fox had ever seen. What caught his attention was a bit of cheese in the crow's beak. Up he trotted to the foot of the tree in which the crow was sitting, and looking up admirably, he cried, "Good morning, beautiful creature." The crow, her head cocked on one side, watched the fox suspiciously, but she kept her beak tightly closed on the cheese and did not return his greeting. "What a charming creature she is," said the fox. "How her feathers shine! Such a wonderful bird should have a very lovely voice, since everything else about her is so perfect. Could she sing just one song? I know I should hail her Queen of the Birds." Listening to these flattering words, the crow forgot all her suspicion, and also her breakfast. She wanted very much to be called Queen of the Birds. So she opened her beak wide to utter her loudest caw. And down fell the cheese straight into the fox's open mouth. "Thank you," said the fox as he walked off. "Though it is cracked, you sure enough have a voice. But where are your wits? The flatterer lives at the expense of those who will listen to him."
That one's so good.
That one was really fun to do too, largely because of how the story just immediately got to me as like, this is a very cartoony, really simple, fun little story. And so that's immediately the way I went with it. I was like, this one has like a Peter and the Wolf kind of feel, and that cartoony, childish kind of fun feel to it. So I went that way immediately, and then Tiffany did a great job of emulating that too.
Yeah, the illustrations definitely kind of had that vibe to it as well. It's really fun to do for sure.
My favorite line is losing her wits and her breakfast.
Yeah, exactly.
Every day.
I think that's one of the funniest moments in all of these, and the humor definitely got captured, like both musically and also the narration that Kenny did for it. I thought was fantastic. So so the wolf in sheep's clothing. I said yes, wolf. The wolf in sheep's clothing. So what do you remember what word is part of your musical cryptogram for this one?
I probably used at least 3 or 4 for that one. Off the top of my head, I can't remember exactly what it was. This theme. The wolf has a theme that comes back in 2 of the different stories, actually, because 2 of the different stories contain the character of the wolf, and the horn. Yeah, the horn gets that one too. So it's vain and scary. Those are the 2. Okay. For the horn. I can't remember the exact. It might have just been wolf, honestly. I think for that specific theme. Yeah, I think it was something really simple like that. And then the rest of the piece was filled in with a lot of other ideas surrounding the characters.
Yeah, and the painting for this one, I needed a reference for the figure in it, and I asked Tom if he would please be a reference for me. He accepted along the terms that it wouldn't look like him, and I agreed to try and alter the face, but I didn't do such a good job altering the face.
Yeah.
So you will recognize.
Yeah. The person wielding a sword looks exactly like me, so that's really, yeah. That's pretty fun.
All right, let's take a look. And feel free, if you have any questions, to put them in the chat, or any comments. Feel free to put some feedback in there and let us know what you think of these so far.
The Wolf in Sheep's Clothing. The wolf could not get enough to eat because of the watchfulness of the shepherds. One night, the wolf found a sheepskin that had been cast aside and forgotten. That evening, the wolf dressed in sheepskin and entered the pasture with the flock. But it happened that very evening that the shepherd took a fancy for mutton chops, and, picking up a knife, went to find the largest of the sheep. Believing it to be a sheep, the shepherd grabbed the wolf and took it to slaughter. The evildoer often comes to harm through his own deceit.
That doesn't look like you at all, Tom.
Right, yeah. Yeah. It's probably the most terrifying one of all, and it's got me with a giant blade. Yeah, that's.
The music is terrifying.
Yeah.
I agree, Jim. Great horn parts for the stag. Yeah, yeah, the wolf. Yeah, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
A lot of fun to play, especially in a woodwind quintet, because you don't get to play very loud and powerful very often. So it was nice
I gave you some full reins a couple times there
Yes,
to really go for it.
Ian said, Tiffany, that he really loves our artwork.
Oh, thank
you. Fantastic. That one definitely gave me nightmares when I first saw it. I was like, oh man, I'm not going to sleep well tonight. All right. So we have 2 more left, and then I just wanted to give people time to ask some questions and talk about, what you've been working on since this project and certainly over the past year. So let's take a look at the North Wind and the Sun. And I like this one because it's I don't know if you want to talk about it, but this is actually my favorite one story-wise.
Mm-hmm. I really like this one a lot too. One of the things that made it kind of difficult at the beginning, sort of like with Oak and the Reeds, but even more so, you're anthropomorphizing the sun and the wind, which are like much more abstract characters than, say, a fox and a crow. Is how do you represent those ideas in music? And it actually came to me at some point with the wind. I had already represented the wind in a couple other stories as well, and it was really an improvisation, just giving them some notes to use in kind of trilling and kind of like really wiggly little forms in that. So the wind parts are almost entirely improvised by the woodwind quintet, and then the sun part is simply the word sun put into the quintet in doubling a couple letters just to get the right textures and stuff like that. But I also thought about it partially as being the phoenix sun that is kind of overbearing at times. So I kind of thought of the sun that way when I was using it musically as well. So
very cool.
The only thing I have to say about this piece is that I tried to create, there's a figure in this particular piece, and each side of her face is different. So if you were to put your hand over one side, it looks different than the other side. So she has got 2 different things going on.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
On purpose.
Yeah. Right. Cool.
All right, let's take a listen.
The North Wind and the Sun. The North Wind and the Sun had a dispute about who was stronger. While they were arguing with much heat and bluster, a traveler wrapped in a long wool cloak walked along the road. Let us agree, said the sun, that whoever can strip the traveler of her cloak is the strongest. Very well, howled the North Wind, and at once sent a cold, biting gust against the traveler. With the first rush of wind, the ends of the cloak whipped around the traveler's body, who immediately wrapped the cloak closely around her. The North Wind tore angrily at the cloak, but the harder the North Wind heaved, the tighter the traveler clasped to her cloak. Then the sun began to shine gentle beams of light. Basking in the pleasant warmth, the traveler unfastened her cloak and let it hang loosely from her shoulders. As the sun's rays grew warmer and warmer, the traveler took off her cap and her scarf. At last, the traveler became so heated, she pulled off her cloak and rested in the welcome shade of a nearby tree. Gentleness and kind persuasion flourish where force and bluster fail.
I just love the story. It's like, just gentle persuasion.
Yeah, yeah.
Good way to kind of
Be
go.
warm and comforting. Yes. Mhm.
Awesome. So the last one that we have is the shepherd boy and the wolf. And so you were mentioning earlier that the wolf theme was incorporated into both of those. And Tiffany, did you have anything that you wanted to share about these pieces or, as a whole, or this last one in general?
As a whole, it's just all kind of representing the concept of what goes around comes around, or, that the story comes into full circle at some point. But yeah, this piece in particular, I just tried to create something different than the other wolf one and put the wolf kind of secretly in there. So you guys will get to see that.
Yeah.
It still does. Well,
Yeah. No, it's really nice. It's because it becomes almost a towering figure over the town rather than just a wolf being there. Yeah.
Right. I had some fun with perspective on this one.
Yeah. Another thing I noticed when watching all of them kind of in a row this way, and this is exactly the way Aesop's Fables are. One of my big goals was to follow the form as closely as possible while giving it a little bit of life and a little bit of extra cushion inside of there. So every single one of these follows a very particular form, especially with that just phrase at the very end. I can't remember the specific term for it, but at the end of every fable, not every fable, but the fables we chose, there is a phrase at the end that wraps up the concept from the entire thing. So that was a big part of picking the stories, was these all fit a particular form and they all match in some way. But it's really interesting to see that they all fit, and that kind of ties them together rather than just being a string of stories. They all have a very similar form and a very similar format, and that's why I like the circular theme that is presented in the visual work as well. So we also had a great time. The circular theme actually made the videos go a lot easier, like putting the videos together, being able to kind of follow the story in the work itself. So it was really nice.
Very cool. Well, let's take a look at this last one, and then I want to see if anybody has any questions and follow up with both of you and ask you what you've been up to.
Yeah, sounds good.
The Shepherd Boy and the Wolf. A shepherd boy tended his master's sheep near a dark forest not far from the village. Soon he found life in the pasture very dull. So, one day, as he sat watching the sheep, he thought of a plan to amuse himself. The boy ran toward the village, loudly shouting, "Wolf! Wolf!" The villagers heard the cry and ran to the pasture. When they arrived, they found the boy doubled in laughter at the trick he had played on them. A few days later, The shepherd boy again shouted, "Wolf! Wolf!" The villagers ran to help him, only to be laughed at again. One evening, as the sun was setting, a wolf really did spring from the forest and fall upon the sheep. In terror, the boy ran toward the village shouting, "Wolf! Wolf!" Though the villagers heard the cry, they did not run to help him as they had before. The wolf killed a great many of the boy's sheep and slipped away into the forest. Liars are not believed, even when they speak the truth.
That's a rough one to end on.
I know, right? Pretty straightforward. Yeah, that's for sure.
He reminded us that the last sentence is the moral of the story, right?
Yeah, I think that's definitely the moral of the story. I think there's for fables, especially from this time period, there's a very specific term, and I cannot remember what it is. Yeah, it's been a while since I've gone through that.
And somebody said they loved the forest in the wolf's hair, that how they were kind of incorporated together.
Mhm.
Yeah, I hadn't looked at these in a while either. So I just wanted anybody that has any questions that they either want to come on camera and or put in the chat and ask either Tiffany about the artwork or Tom about the compositions, or I'm gonna give it a second here. So Emma Jean is here, and she really thought it sounded very awesome, which is great. So we Dr. Brady and I both know Emma, so good to see you.
Yeah.
So Jane asked, Tiffany, did you listen to the music before you painted the pictures, or just the story?
I got to listen to the music. Yep, both. I got to see the story, or see the words for the story and listen to the music. So it definitely helps. I'm usually, when I compose anything, I usually listen to music while I paint and kind of incorporate that energy into what I'm working on.
Great. Jim said, Tom, great voicing and depictions in the music, and Tiffany, great pictures. James said he wanted to come on camera for a second to answer some questions. So if you want to pop on for a second. Jane also said they fit extremely well together. So it's great to have these as a set. One of our, as I mentioned early on, that we use these a lot for our educational outreach. We try not to put that one last, especially when we're playing at like 7:30 in the morning. Kind of, sets the tone for the day.
Yeah. No, I like to play that one and be like, all right, see you, everybody. Yeah.
Did she come up with the artwork?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, definitely listening to the music inspired me for sure. I've always felt very close to, there's like a form of artwork called synesthesia, where you're able to see color and shapes within sound whenever you listen to music and things like that. I've always felt like I've had the ability to see shapes and color with music. Mm-hmm. So it was perfect to have Tom write that and be able to help me with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I made sure to give her, not only had we recorded them at that point, or at least I think we had recorded all the pieces in a rehearsal at that point. So I was able to give her what the music sounded like. I also gave you the scores of the music, just so you kind of look at them. And then also, and all of the text and all of that too. So we kind of collaborate, and I got to watch all of the paintings come together in person, and we got to spitball a little bit here and there too. So it was really fun to watch that process.
That's great. Thanks, James, for your question.
Walk in.
Thank you. Anybody else have a question? I have some follow-up, just a quick follow-up for both Tom and Tiffany. So it's been a crazy year. We haven't made music together. Tom and I recorded a duet back in October, but that's been pretty much it for the entire group. So Tom, what have you been working on or practicing? Have you been composing at all since you sat down?
My main focus has been teaching during this extremely crazy year, and trying to make online school interesting and fun. But I have gotten to do a lot of work in that as well. I maintained some sort of a practice schedule, and I have been working largely on a duet for clarinet and bassoon, part of an extension of the Impressions series. That if you've ever been to a Milaf concert before, you've probably heard at least one one set of impressions, but I have many sets of impressions. This one is for clarinet and bassoon. I also, let's see, um, I also finished work on a clarinet and piano piece at the very early onset of the pandemic time. So I finished a work for clarinet and piano early on too. Yeah.
Well, I just want to say thank you to Crystal. She's 7 years old and she really enjoyed the music and the artwork. So thank you
Oh,
so much for doing that.
Crystal.
yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
I hope this inspires you to want to create something on your own and that you'll come back and join us for some of our other concerts. So, Tiffany, what have you been working on in the past recently? I know you've been up to some really, really cool
Yeah.
projects, especially for this month in particular.
Yeah, so this last month I was able to get involved with a bunch of murals, and it was a Black History Month mural project. You might have seen them around if you're in downtown Phoenix. We had 28 murals, so they're all over the place. A handful of them are on schools, some elementary schools, um, but they were really fun. And then this next week, I'm working on another mural. It's for based on sustainability for the Phoenix Mural Project, and it's going to be along the canal between 7th Avenue and 15th Avenue. There's a bunch of artists doing murals there. So if you get a chance to be outside and go and look at those, that's a great way to enjoy art and still socially distance. And then besides that, I've just been working on some personal projects mostly.
Very cool. Did you want me to share your mural?
A mural?
Yeah. So I have one of the photos that you sent.
So yeah, that one is a sorry, it's on my camera phone, so it's not super great, but it's at Lolo's Chicken and Waffles. Each mural had 3 artists involved with them. So we each got to work on a portrait ourselves, like on our own. I did Lucille B. Smith, which
Yeah, the left side there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mrs. White is in there. She is one of the founders of Lolo's Chicken and Waffles, and
Mrs. White's Golden Rule.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. So it was really cool. We got to meet her grandson, and she is like 97, 96 years old, still alive. He says that it's the chicken and waffles that she's doing so well. So really cool.
Very cool. Well, I just wanted to give one last minute.
Oh,
You're muted, Rose.
I'm sorry. I was so I just wanted to give people one last chance if they had any questions for us. We have I believe 3 more Live at the Library series coming up. They're always on the 4th Thursday at 6:30 to 7:30. The next concert we actually have is going to be the Sugar Thieves. They're a blues group in town. So and I'm really excited to have them join us at the library or online and support them. This has been a really difficult year for musicians, so giving people the opportunity to perform will be great. And then the month after that, we have our group will be back with some more live concerts or stuff from our live concerts. And then we have a steel drum ensemble that's going to be performing for our May performance. And so, did you guys have any last thoughts? I'm going to throw up the link to these videos in the chat real quick.
Awesome.
Cool. I don't think I have anything in particular to add. I think we touched a lot of the topics and the construction and all of the thoughts and ideas behind this. I guess the other thing to add is that we got to do these, and because these went so well and we enjoyed performing them and the videos went really well together, we're working on putting together another set, this time of North American folk tales. And we've already got 4 of them together. So we're gonna continue to do a few more, and hopefully have something similar to what the Aesop's Fables is, with new types of stories that don't come together quite as cleanly as the Aesop's Fables all the time, but are nonetheless a part of North American culture. So I'm excited to work on that.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight, everybody. Thank you, Tiffany and Tom, for giving us some insight into, you know, what the creative process is like. You know, there's so many downfalls to everything that has happened. This, you know, it's been a really, really awful year, but we found some good ways to bring some silver linings in ways of being a chance to share music and talk about music and art in a different way than that we wouldn't usually have time for. So I hope you had a great time tonight. Thank you, everybody that came. I put in the chat a link to our YouTube channel that has all of these videos, and then also to our website in case you want to check out some of the other work we did. Ivy, did you have anything else that you wanted to add tonight?
I just wanted to thank you, Rose and Thomas and Tiffany, for sharing your talent and time with us. I've seen this program a few times, and before we began tonight, Thomas mentioned that it premiered at the library. So I've seen it several times, but in this format, it was so intimate, and I mean, I got so much out of it. So, you know, there are some benefits to seeing things in this way. So thank you so much. And I hadn't heard from Tiffany nearly so much, and it really added to the program. So thank you so much for sharing your time with us.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. And we hope to see you next month, the 4th Thursday for Live at the Library. Have a great night, everybody.